like to chat with my people before we dive into.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
It helps me get to know you a little bit better, and I'm able to give a better heartfelt and intentional introduction for my people. Because the one thing I don't like is when I come onto a podcast and they read someone's bio and you can tell throughout the conversation that they don't know each other and they're just on there to fill spots. I like to have time with my people.
I love it. I love the research. I do a podcast for myself, and I do the same thing. I don't read a bio, but I try to do as much research on the person as possible. So I have a little bit of a baseline.
Yeah. And I like to have like the open conversations. I'm a very open person. And so that's why one of the things I let people know when you're coming onto this podcast is we talk about your story.
Yeah.
And if you're not open to talking about your story, you got to let me know. Because sometimes parts of our story is not something we want to share or people in our community feel is appropriate or in our family or whatever.
I'm perfectly fine sharing my story. I'm perfectly fine getting vulnerable. I'm good. I'm not shy about it. I've been telling my story a lot lately, so I'm okay with it.
That's awesome. So, I was looking and it says that you're a mindset coach.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I do a lot of different coaching. So I do like one-on-one coaching, do some consulting work, and then I also do speaking. I'm really getting into the speaking world a lot lately since COVID has subsided. So I've been putting on my own events and I've been hired to do some events. So it's been kind of like a synergy thing where I'm doing these speaking events, and as a result of these speaking events, there's people that are connecting with me and wanting to work with me one-on-one coaching. So it's kind of a great synergy where, just by doing one thing, it's allowing me to continue doing my other things with the coaching and stuff. Because I love the coaching. I love it. It's a lot of fun. But I also love doing the speaking. I love that nervous energy of, that anticipation and going in front of people. It's just a great feeling. I'm nervous. I've done several speaking engagements, but every single time I'm always nervous, and I think that's a good thing. I think you should be a little nervous. Get your blood flowing.
Well, did you know nervous and excited actually present themselves in your body in the same way?
Yep.
So you can think about it as I'm nervous or I'm excited.
Yep.
And I found that if I focus on being excited, the nausea subsides a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I always, in my speeches, sometimes I bring up Bruce Springsteen, because he talks about that. He talks about before going on stage that he can't feel his feet, his hands are tingling, and his head's spinning. And he says, "Now I know I'm ready to get on stage." So he uses that energy as as catapulting him, that he's ready. That's his checklist of being ready to go on stage. So it kind of goes into what you're saying about the excitement to nervousness. And you're right, they're the exact same feeling. And if you have a better or a different perspective on things and go with that excitement, like you're going to a theme park or something, as opposed to going to the dentist, it serves you well when you're on stage or whatever you're doing.
Right. No, I completely agree. I do most of my speaking virtually.
Okay.
Just because that's how it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
I put on my own live event, and had some people speak. I spoke. It was amazing. And I find that when I've been asked to speak or be on panels, I did do now I can't remember the name of it. It's been so long. I don't know, 4 years since I did it, but it was an event all about suicide prevention and awareness. And so I shared my story and my battle with suicide and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I found about myself, I was like, I really want to do like Toastmasters or something. I want to hone my craft of speaking. And one of the things I learned is I cannot speak from a script. I cannot prepare my speeches, because even when I prepare my speech, I'm so trusting of my intuition and trusting God right beforehand to help me speak to who needs to hear me. So it's for them. The whole speech goes out the water anyway.
I love that. I think it becomes more authentic that way. I mean, I'm sure you have bullet points that you want to cover, and that's what it's all about.
I can take a sticky note and put my little bullet points, and
there you go. That's all you need to do. Because I had that same when I first started doing that. I memorized all my speeches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time being very nervous, and I forgot what I was going to say. And then when I shifted to what you're saying is just having the bullet points, it was all good because I could say, oh, I forgot what I was going to say, but then I can go through my head to the bullet points and go, okay, I'm just going to transition that way. It's much easier to do it that way and prepare yourself with bullet points than memorizing your speech, because if you forget something, it just throws you all off.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. So as we get into this, what I will do is I will just introduce you.
Okay.
And then I'll ask you to share who you are, what you do, how you help people. And then I will, after you share that, then I'll lead us into asking questions and talking about your story. And because this is uncharted, your story is uncharted territory for me. It's unfamiliar to me.
Okay.
I've known people who have had cerebral palsy, but not in a way that it was something where I was able to ask questions or to learn about it, or it was really just not appropriate to have those conversations, or I wasn't at a place that I felt like it was appropriate to do that. I'm really looking forward to diving into your story.
Great. Yeah. Get comfortable. If you ask away.
Awesome. Welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Dena Adams, and we are talking with Paul Forchione.
Actually, it's Fortune, like Fortune 500. Fortune.
Yeah. I should have asked you that before we got started. And I looked at your last name and was like, oh, I know I'm going to do that. And I shouldn't have done it. But, this is podcasting, there's things we forget. We're human.
That's right.
Paul Forchione. And so after getting to chat with Paul just a little bit before we got started, I have to say that one of the things I'm really enjoying about getting to know him is his openness. He just has this energy that I'm here, and no matter what it is, I am going to share, even if it's hard, because it's going to help somebody else. And I can really feel that energy come through, that just the heart you have for people and the desire to allow your story to help others. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from you and letting our audience just get to know you through this episode. So Paul, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. And thank you for saying that, because one of the biggest things that I look at other people about is being authentic. And I think that's what you said about me without saying that. So I appreciate that you caught on to that, is that's what I want to be. I want to be authentic. I just want to show up as me. And I think that you're picking up on that. And I really appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I love about getting to know my guests, even if it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes before a podcast. I'm a very intuitive, empathic person, and I like to get a feel for people instead of just, I know I mentioned this to you before, other than just reading their bio. They can read the bio and the description, right? But that's not going to tell them anything really about the person. And I like alignment. I'm all about alignment. So when people are listening to this podcast, I like them to feel aligned with who they're listening to, because they can listen to maybe 30 episodes. But if they're looking for someone who is their next step, and there's no part of our conversation that's about alignment, and I'm not utilizing my gifts to share what I'm getting from the person I'm talking to, it's really not going to serve the audience very well. It's not going to serve my guest very well. So I really like to utilize that and really get focused on that aspect of connecting with people. So what I want to do first is ask you just to share, you do an introduction for you, who you are, what you do, who you serve, and then I will get us started on talking about your story.
All right. Well, I'm a coach and a speaker. And what I like to do, what the trucks of what I do, my main title of what I do is taking back your pen and writing the story that you want for yourself, not for anybody else, but for yourself, because you are the author of your own story. So do not give up your pen to anybody else and let them write the story for you. Take back your pen and write the story on how you want your life to go. You are the author. And this is a passion for me because all through my life, people have wanted to take the pen from me and write the story they thought my life should go. And all through my life, I said, no, give me back my pen. I'm going to write the story on how I feel it should go. And that's what I've been doing since I was a kid all the way to present day. I have my pen in hand and I'm writing my own story. So it's a passion piece for me. And that's what I share with my audience that I'm speaking to, or the coaching clients I'm working with, wherever I'm at. That is the crux of it.
I love the part where you said take back your pen. And I think that hit me because I spent my life handing it to everyone else, saying, you tell me how you want me to be so you'll be happy with me. So that you won't be mad at me, so that I won't ruffle any feathers. So me being me won't cause you any problems. And that's how I spent most of my life. And so for you to be sharing with people, and do you hear an echo?
I don't hear an echo, no.
I hear an echo. I'm going to turn my speaker down.
Okay.
I can edit that out.
Okay.
On the podcast, not on the YouTube channel. I think it's so important for us to inspire and encourage others. And I love that with the way you're talking about to take back your pen, it's telling people to stop giving away your life and letting other people control it. And I feel like there's so many of us, especially people pleasers like me, where we want to please other people so much that we will take a piece of ourselves and set it aside and believe that it's not valid and it's not relevant and it's not valuable because other people don't see it that way. And so I love that your focus is to help people take back their pen, own who they are, love themselves completely. Like, this is what I get out of this very short statement that you shared, and run with it. Don't run with pens or scissors or whatever, but you're going to run. Like, you take that pen and it's nobody else's right to say what you should or shouldn't write with that pen. And that's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what the crux of my coaching is all about. And what I'm speaking about is that living your true self. We got one life to live, so we might as well live it the way we want to live it. And it's a shame. I've interviewed people in their 70s and 80s and 90s, and they talk about, oh, I could have invested in that, or I could have traveled there, or I could have lived there, or I could have married this person, or I could have done this. It's all about the regrets. And a lot of it has to do with what you just talked about, being a people pleaser and not living their authentic life. And that's what it's all about. Living that authentic life, getting into older age going, man, I've had a fantastic life. Yeah, I failed a lot, but I've gotten back up and I've done it my way because that's the life I wanted to live.
I love that. So I want to start. I'm going to let you start where you want to with your story. Just a little background. Paul was born with cerebral palsy, and the doctors told his mom he would never walk again. And so I would love for you to share a couple of things around that story when you're sharing it. Obviously that's a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual struggle that you're facing, right? Your mom was going through. And then there's either a collective of moments or a defining moment where something shifted gradually or in an instant that said, I'm not going to accept this. And so share with us what that looks like and what you did to choose to keep moving forward through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's just start at the beginning. You mentioned I have cerebral palsy. And if your viewers don't know what cerebral palsy is, it's lack of oxygen to the brain. Normally it happens at labor. And as a result of this lack of oxygen to the brain at labor, it can leave one side of the body paralyzed. It can affect your speech. And these things are permanent. Generally happens to the right side of your body. So when I was born, I wasn't moving the right side of my body very much. And naturally, my mother was concerned about that. So she took me to a doctor to get testing to see what was going on with me. And that's where I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And this first doctor told my mom that I would never, ever be able to walk. And when I got to a certain age, it would be a good idea to get me used to being in a wheelchair because that was going to be my life going forward. I've had many conversations with my mom about that moment that she had that conversation with that doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me that night, I think she said she cried herself to sleep, wondering what the life was going to be for her baby boy, the challenges that I was going to have to go through as a child and as an adult, not being able to walk.
What age were you when they diagnosed you?
I was probably a couple months old.
Okay.
So she told me the next morning, like I said, I'm a couple months old, so I can't talk at this time. But she said when she woke up and she woke me up to start the day, she said that I gave her a look if to say, Mom, do not let this be my story. I want to walk. Mm-hmm. And that mama bear inside of her started roaring. She got a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion, a fifth opinion, finally found a physician willing to help. And with this physician's help and me doing physical therapy 5 to 6 times a week and my mom's unrelentless attitude to make sure I was walking between age 2 and 3. And I asked my mom about that. Was there a number on where you were going to stop to get an opinion? And she said, no, there was not a number. I wasn't stopping. It was going to happen. She had this will that I was going to walk. She was going to do whatever it took. Mm-hmm. She was going to go travel the world if she had to make sure I was walking. So I was walking between age 2 and 3. Now, I don't really remember that, but obviously that's a huge feat in my young life when 4 of the doctors said that wasn't going to happen for me. But right. I do remember being put into soccer roughly when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And at the time, I probably could run about 25 to 50 yards before my leg would give out. So on the soccer field, I'm pretty much standing there where kids are playing soccer around me. I remember one day after practice, I was just fed up with playing soccer because kids are teasing me. I'm not having fun. I was going to tell my mom, I don't want to play soccer anymore. That's done. I'm done. And I remember what my mom told me that day because it stuck with me to this day in my personal life and in my professional life. She said, Paul, if you do not want to play soccer anymore, that is fine. But you need to honor your commitment. So you need to finish out that soccer season. And if you don't want to play soccer after that, you do not have to play soccer anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what has happened. I'm 42 years old and I haven't played soccer since I was 5 years old. But I did finish out that soccer season. I honored my commitments. And that's just that's ingrained in me now. Like when I'm commit to something, I finish the commitment. And then after that, I evaluated if that's something I want to continue or I don't want to do that anymore. And it stuck with me at that young age. But after that soccer season, I was probably maybe a year after my soccer season, I got a surgery that was pretty much a game changer for me. It tightened up the tendon in my foot, gave me a little bit more spring in my step, and kind of took away the pain I was feeling when I ran. I didn't know how big of a game changer it was until I switched schools around this time. And I remember my first day of PE, physical education. We did our stretches, and the teacher says, okay, guys, run a lap. And I'm thinking to myself, here we go again. I'm going to run 25 to 50 yards. I'm going to have to stop. These kids are going to see that, and they're going to start to tease me. But because of the surgery, it was different. I was able to go past that point where I normally have to stop. And I remember saying to myself, come on, Paul, you got this, buddy. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And I finished the lap with the other kids. On the outside, I kept it cool, but on the inside, I was like, yes, 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 yes. It was the first time in my young life where I just fit in with the kids. I didn't stand out. And because of the surgery, things got easier for me, but I wouldn't consider them easy. So I still kind of walk with a little bit of a limp, and I still held my right arm a little bit differently. My parents got divorced when I was about, I think, 11 or 12 years old. So I had to switch schools. And that's a tough age to switch schools. It's middle school, junior high, whatever you want to call it. Kids are going through hormonal changes. They're becoming teenagers. And a lot of these kids that this new school is going to have been going to school with each other for years and years, and they've already formed their cliques, and they don't have any time for anybody new. So just being a new kid alone is going to be tough in that environment. But I'm a new kid who, like I said, walks with a little bit of a limp and holds his right arm a little bit differently. So I was a little bit different than the other kids. And I could not make any friends at this school. I was bullied, spit on, teased, tackled, you name it, they did it to me. And I came from this old school mentality that you didn't squill, you didn't tattle. So I held all this pain inside of me. And it just a rough time in my life. And then on top of this, I was raised Catholic. So my mom wanted me to go to a Catholic high school. So I had to take an assessment test to see where they were going to place me when I got to high school. Well, I bombed the test because when I met with the principal and my mom, the principal tells the both of us that she's going to put me at the lowest level possible, and she doesn't expect much from me. I don't seem like I'm going to be college material. After one test, this principal says this to the both of us. So now I think I'm stupid, and I'm going back to school, and I'm getting bullied and teased at. And this is going back to your point where you asked me about, was there kind of a pivoting point? Well, this is kind of where it happened. I just was fed up with feeling angry and sad all the time. I knew those weren't my go-to emotions, but because of the environment I was in, those are the emotions that were coming up most of the time. And I was sick of feeling that way. So I thought, what if I focused in on something? What if I focused in on a goal or something? I could put all my attention there, and that will help me ignore the noise that was feeling outside of that. So I thought, what could my goal be? And at the time, I loved baseball. So I said, what if I tried to make my varsity baseball team in high school? So I started playing fall ball, winter ball, spring ball. And if I wasn't doing that, I was throwing a tennis ball against the wall. And I was doing this constantly. And while this was going on, while I was going through this journey, a coach comes up to me and goes, Paul, you play a lot of baseball. What do you want to do with this? And when the first few times he asked me that question, I just didn't want to tell him. I was embarrassed to tell him that somebody with cerebral palsy wanted to make a varsity baseball team. So I just said, oh, I just love baseball. But he kept asking me that question. And he caught me at a weak moment because I just blurted out, I want to make my varsity baseball team. And I'm like, oh crap, I can't believe I just said that. And I was bracing myself for this coach to laugh at me. But he didn't. He paused for a second and he said, that's doable. And I'm like, what? That's doable? He goes, absolutely, it's doable. But you got to have other people keep you accountable for this goal. And I'm like, what is this guy talking about? Other people keep me accountable for this goal. And he goes, after practice tomorrow, you're going to go in front of your team and you're going to tell your team that this is your goal. And I'm like, no. I don't want to do that. They're going to make fun of me. They just start accepting me. He goes, Paul, there's going to be weak moments in your life going after this goal where you're going to need other people to lift you up on one of these weak moments. So they need to know your goal. So I said, okay. So reluctantly, after practice, I was shaken. And I went in front of the team and I told the team my goal. And again, I was bracing myself for them to laugh at me as well. And they didn't. They clapped for me. And while I was going through this, I know this now. I didn't know this when I was going through this, but I started to send a different energy out towards kids. I started to gain more confidence in myself, my shoulders back, my head up. And as a result of this new energy I was sending out to these kids, they started sending a different energy back towards me. In other words, instead of bullying and teasing me, they started rooting for me. So my high school career was much, much different than my middle school career, all because of how I carried myself. And that alone is the win. But the cherry on top of the whole thing was I was able to make my varsity baseball team as a junior and a senior. And my senior year, I pitched a 3-hit shutout. They poured the Gatorade on me, and I felt so alive. I felt so good. I was the top of the world. I graduate high school, and I start to really reflect on that goal that I set for myself years earlier about making the varsity baseball team. Like I said, when I first made that goal, it was just a way to ignore the noise. I really didn't think I was going to make the team, but I was able to do that. So I started to reflect on what that principal said to me years earlier about not being college material. See, all through high school, I mailed it in. I just did enough to stay eligible to play baseball because I thought, what's the point? I'm not smart. I'm not going to college. Just do enough to get by and move on. There's no need to waste time doing anything further. But I thought, man, if I could make this goal happen about making a varsity baseball team, why can't I set another goal for myself to say that I am college material? So I enrolled into a junior college because that was the only place that would accept me at the time. I got myself a math tutor. I got myself a tutor for other subjects. I went to the math lab. I did everything necessary to increase my grade point average. And as a result of this hard work, I took my barely a 2.0, if not a little bit lower, all the way to a 3.5, where I was able to transfer to a 4-year university and become college material, graduate. And I so wanted to go back to that principal and say, see, you were wrong. I was college material. But you know what? I think I should probably thank her, because all through college, I heard her voice telling me that I wasn't college material. And my next thought was, I'll show you that I am college material. So I don't know if that was her way of motivating me. I don't know, but I just kind of ignored it and moved on. And I could go on and on. I don't know if you want to stop me there, but that's kind of the crux of where I came from.
So there's so many things that you shared that it got me thinking, and I'm sure our listeners too, of what their experience was like, right? So I thought about what it was like for me when I switched schools at 12 years old. I thought about what it was like for me when my parents got divorced at that time. I thought about what it was like for me getting bullied and going through all the crap I did in middle school. And when you're taught and in high school and being told you're never going to be able to go to college because you're not good enough. Like, it's so crazy, like, just to hear somebody else say all these things. And I think to myself and go, that's how I always wanted to be. When someone said I couldn't do something, I always heard of these people, these people who would be like, yeah, I'll show you, and do it anyway. And I'm like, I don't understand that. That's not how I functioned. And so I would hear these stories of people saying, I wasn't going to accept it. And they had something that I wanted. And what I learned was they're wired differently than I am. They have different attributes that are super strong that are not strong in me. And when I stopped allowing myself to try to be like them and use what worked for them, I started realizing that, first of all, this is an incredible story. And for you to find that willpower to say, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. And to do it. Because even people who that is a natural thing for them, they will fight it. And not everybody who is capable of doing that will do it. But for those of us who are not like that, that doesn't fuel us. That drops us faster than, a hurricane does a tree. That's something that would stop me in my tracks, debilitate me, and I would go deeper and deeper into all my mental health issues and everything. And so what I learned is, and hopefully some people will take this from this conversation, when you hear a story like Paul's and you don't show up like that in the world, and when he says something that fueled him, but it tanks you, all you have to do is figure out what does fuel you, because we're all different. And for you to be that little kid going, come on, you can do this in your head. I'm sitting there hearing all the negative thoughts going, every reason I shouldn't be doing this. right? And we all go through that where there's a whole spectrum of how we talk to ourselves, how we push ourselves, what fuels us, what stops us. And what I take from this story is you never, even though other people were telling you no, you looked within yourself to find the yes and to give permission. And you didn't wait for everybody else to give you permission. You chose it to give it to yourself. And I didn't learn how to do that until I'm not even going to tell you, much later in life, right? My youngest kids were almost ready to graduate high school when I discovered, all I have to do is give myself permission. What? I heard about it and I heard stories like that. But even when, my youngest were in middle school, my oldest were graduating high school, I still didn't grasp the concept and the understanding. It took time for me to dig deep into myself and figure out what that meant for me. And so hearing a story like yours before I understood I was allowed to give myself permission, to hearing it after, the response I have inside of myself is very different. So I want to encourage people with this for a moment before we continue with his story. When you hear someone's story and you immediately go into, but because of his mom being so supportive and driven, that's why he could, and always putting off these excuses as to why it worked for someone else and not you, that means there's some growth and some self-awareness that needs to happen, because you're still being a very loud negative voice for yourself. And I was that loud negative voice for myself for a very long time. And I let everybody else's perspective become my truth. And when I started learning how to set that aside and started discovering my own truth, and I started taking back my pen, like you talk about, it's not something that happens overnight. Like listening to your story, this was not an overnight thing. This was years of going through bullying and negative self-talk even, and hearing other people speak negatively over your life. And what I want people to really get is that if you're going through a story like Paul's, or you're going through a struggle of any kind, do not compare someone's highlight reels, someone's aha moments, someone's, end of the movie to your very beginning, right? We tend to compare where we are to someone else's coming out on the other side. And so I'm hopeful this is encouraging to others like it is to me. Because this is like, I'm just sitting here going, I went through that. Oh, I did that. Oh, yep, I know what that's like. And I'm like, why couldn't I think like that at that age? Why wasn't I telling myself those things? Why? But you know what? I was. But everybody else's voice was louder than my own. And I believed everybody else when they said I had no value. So then if I'm telling myself these things and I'm believing their lie that I have no value, I'm not going to believe the words that I'm telling myself either. So if you will, I'd like for you to share, okay, so now you're in college and you've gone, you're going through college and everything. I'd like to hear more about how you went from going to college and all of that into becoming a mindset coach, a speaker, and someone pouring this passion and encouragement into other people, and what that journey was like for you.
Absolutely. So I graduate college, like I mentioned. I have no life experience whatsoever. I'm 22, 23 years old. I have no idea what the heck I want to do with my life. I had a family friend who was in the banking industry, the mortgage industry, and he said, "Hey, we're hiring mortgage loan officers. Would you like to give it a go?" And I'm like, I got nothing going on. Let's go. Let's try this out. So I get in, and this is my first real job. I mean, I worked other jobs. I worked fast food and other things, but this is my first out of college job. So I got to wear a
Your
nice
first adult job.
Exactly. My first adult job.
Yeah.
I got to wear a long sleeve collared shirt, and I'm feeling good, right? I'm feeling excited to go to work. And I get there and no one wants to talk to me. I'm sitting alone at lunch. I'm like, man, I haven't felt this way since middle school. What in the heck is going on here? And I realized what the deal was. They knew that I knew the CEO of the company. So it wasn't because of my talents, it's because of who I knew. So what they were going to do is they were going to chew me up and spit me out because I didn't belong there. So I dug in. I'm like, I'm going to show these people that I do belong here. So I had a positive attitude. I didn't complain about the workload. I worked the long hours, and from afar, because they didn't want to talk to me, I was observing what the top loan officers did in the company. And I'll never forget my first day of wanting to go out in the fielding at loans for the first time. I had my rate sheets ready and I was going to go out the door. And I remember my family friend CEO stops and goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm ready to go. I'm going to go out and get loans." And he looks at me and goes, "No, you are not ready yet. Let's get you a little bit more training and then we'll send you out in a few months." And I'm like, no, I got this. Let me go. And he was 100% right. I needed way more training. I was falling on my face left and right. I was getting abused by these clients because I didn't know what I was doing. But months would go by and I started to realize what value I could add to these clients. And I started to bring in loans and more loans and more loans. And 2 years later, I became a top producer in this company. And the people who didn't want to talk to me when I first got there are now coming to me with questions on how I was able to turn things around at such a fast clip. And I loved what I was doing. It was amazing what I was doing. I couldn't wait for Mondays. I was living for Mondays. I loved going to work. I thought this was going to be my life's work.
That's amazing because you don't hear that from many people.
No, especially at that young of an age. I was in my
Right.
mid-20s at the time. And then 2008, 2009 hit and the economy tanked it.
Yeah.
And that whole company that I was working for, they were no more. They went belly up and I'd have to get another job. And that company went belly up. This happened about 3 or 4 times. And I was starting to really lose the luster of being in the mortgage industry. And like I said, I was living for Mondays. Some of these other jobs, I was not living for Mondays. I hated Mondays. Matter of fact, I had what's called the Monday blues, where I would be in a bad mood Sunday evening because I was thinking about all the crap I had to do Monday and I hated it. So it was just it's just a hard time in my life. Like, what do I want to do? What is going on? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not having fun. It's just a stress. I constantly stressed. I'm not sleeping. I'm drinking too much. This is just not good.
Mm.
Then the last place I was at, they brought in this motivational speaker to drum up the sales numbers, to get us in a great mood. And I'm rolling my eyes, hearing about, like, I'm going to this motivational thing. I'm like, this is nonsense. I know how to sell. What a waste of time, this and that, whatever. But I get in there, and that guy blew me away. The guy was awesome, to the point where I had to talk to him after to tell him how great of a job he did. And he was so gracious to me. He allowed me to pick his brain a little bit. He said he started as a life coach. And I'm like, what in the heck is a life coach? And he explained that to me. I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's what I need to get into. Maybe that's what I want to do. So on the off time of doing the mortgage stuff, I was going to school, getting my coaching certificate on the off time. And I started telling my coworkers and my friends that I wanted to get into this coaching stuff, this life coaching thing. And pretty much all of them are humoring me and going, "Okay, life coach, go ahead and save the world. But before you do that, can you bring a couple loans into us?" So nobody was really taking me seriously. And then I started getting my website up and I started posting things on my social media. And at the time, the legal team got wind of what I was doing and they pulled me aside and said, "What is this that you're doing here?" And I was very, very transparent. I said, the mortgage loans is going to be my full-time job, and this is going to be a side gig for me. And they said, "This looks like this could be a conflict of interest. We're going to get back to you." And I'm thinking, uh-oh, that does not sound good. And
wait. I got to stop you there.
Yeah.
A conflict of interest, mortgage loans, and life coaching.
Yeah.
what first goes through my head is, one, people fear things they don't understand. Mm-hmm. So if you're out there looking to be a life coach and you're coming up against some of these challenges that Paul did, know that it's normal. There's a scripture that says a prophet is not known in his own land. And so when you're around people who are familiar with you, they will not see the value in what you can bring to the table because they knew who you were before you got into that. And they don't understand how you can be that thing, whatever it is, unless you went to a college and you got a degree and that makes sense to them. So I just want to encourage people with that for a second as you're talking about that, because that was like, people don't understand. So please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So they came back with this report of a 5-page report of what I couldn't say. And I looked at this report and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make any traction in the coaching world if I follow this to the T. So I thought I'm going to have to make some changes. So for a year, I didn't do any coaching, didn't post anything about coaching. I just did mortgage stuff. Mm-hmm. And what I was doing is I was paying down all my debts. And a year later, I just quit. And people are looking at me like I am nuts. I just made President's Club, and they're like, you're a loan officer. You're great at this. What in the heck are you doing? And they're like, this life coaching thing is pie in the sky nonsense. Stop this nonsense and go back to work. And I said, maybe it might be nonsense, but I got to give it a go. I got to give it a try. And they're like, okay, whatever. You'll be back. And for a while, I thought they were going to be right, because I wasn't getting any coaching clients. And to make ends meet, I started doing, Uber Eats, Uber, all those delivery stuff, right? And I would be delivering to people that I went to high school with and everything like that. And they're kind of judging me. I guess, all times are tough, Paul. I thought you were a mortgage loan officer. You were doing well. And now you're driving Uber. What the heck is going on with you? So there was a lot of down. I mean, you talk about the negative self-talk. I'm thinking, mm-hmm. What am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? I did some soul searching, and I realized the crux of why people weren't hiring me to coach or doing any speaking gigs is because how do I expect people to be vulnerable with me if I'm not vulnerable with them? See, the story I told you about having CP, cerebral palsy, I wanted to bury that story. I didn't want to tell a soul about that story because all through growing up, all I wanted to do was fit in. I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want any special treatment. So the thought of bringing that story up, I would be near in tears talking about that. But I thought in the back of my head, that's the only way this is going to work is if I share my story. So I started sharing my story, and it was shaky at first. I would be crying telling my story. We talked about being vulnerable and not being able to share my story. Yes, several years ago, that was me. I could not share this story that I'm telling you now, but I kept telling it over and over again. Anywhere I could tell the story where it made sense to tell the story. I didn't tell it in the grocery store, anything like that, but anywhere that was appropriate to. I guess if the checker had a little bit of time, I could go through my story. But I kept doing it over and over again, and I'll never forget my first client ever. He didn't have cerebral palsy, but he had something else. And he goes, I don't have that, but I have this, and I feel like you understand me, and I would be honored if I could hire you as a coach. And we started getting more coaching clients, speaking gigs. And which brings me to present day talking to you.
I love that because that's one of the things for most of my audience are online entrepreneurs. So a lot of them are probably coaches, consultants, things of that nature, or they do some type of service-based business. And one of the challenges we all face when you start a business is how do I get clients? And if you talk to someone who's a marketer, they'll tell you it's all about marketing. If you talk to someone who is a, social media expert, they're going to tell you it's all about being on social media. Depending on the industry the person is in, they're going to tell you, for the most part, that's the way you're going to get clients. And what you said, I had to share my story. I had to be vulnerable, is the most important part, because no matter what you share on social, no matter what you do for your marketing, if you can't share your story, you won't get clients. One of the challenging things I have run into, I have tons of stories. And my challenge has always been, what story do I tell? What's the story that I tell? And I have picked a story that I tell. The problem is the story doesn't seem as detrimental as it is, because I don't tell all the many, many stories that have happened before that in my life. And I had people tell me all the time when I was younger, my gosh, every time I talk to you, it's like a freaking soap opera. And I'm like, can't my life be like a movie? A soap opera never ends. It runs for 30, 40, 50 years, and it's always drama and chaos. A movie, you have a beginning, you have an issue, you have this big drama moment, and then everything is fine and good at the end. Can't my life be like a movie instead of a soap opera? And it's still like a soap opera. It is. And I think that one of the things that's important for us as entrepreneurs, if we're pursuing speaking, if we have a story to share, if we want to inspire others, is we have to figure out, like you did, your story throughout the time, to be able to say, here's where it started and here's where everything changed. And now I'm able to do this. And if you can find a path on your story that tracks, that you can make sense of, this all connects, but it's not discounting some of my story that doesn't get told, and understand that we can't really tell everything, right? We can't tell all the trauma that we've been through. We can't, nor do we need to. But when we pick that one story that hit us the most, that impacted us the most, that maybe caused us the most challenges, maybe wasn't the worst for us, but caused a lot of the challenges that we faced, like being able to tell that story the way you so eloquently did today, allows us to get in touch with something that we all want to kind of never talk about. And I love that you touched on that too, is that I didn't want to talk about this story. I didn't want to tell anybody. And I cried when I used to say it, right? I used to cry when I would tell my story. I used to cry when I would tell my stories. Now I can talk about them and people are like, are you human? Because it doesn't seem like it bothers you at all. And I'm like, no, I just know that I don't need to be emotional about it right now. I don't have to be in that space emotionally for me to tell the story and still have you know that it was hard and it was painful. And there's lessons that we learn on these journeys that help us be better for others. And so I appreciate you being willing to share your story, because one, if anyone's wanting to learn how to be a speaker, just replay Paul's section of this when he tells his story. There's so much, what's the word I'm looking for? Finesse in how you share it. But for those of us who are not storytellers, but we're fact tellers, there were pieces that I could pick up on that was like, oh, that's something I could do better. Like, even if I just set the whole story aside and listen to, how can I be a better speaker? How can I share my story? What if I've never shared my story and I want to be able to share my story? I want to encourage all the listeners, go back and listen to Paul's story. Fast forward through all my crap and what I say, it doesn't matter. Just listen to what he had to say and how he shared his story. Very intentional, very like authentic and open, very expressive, yet it was everything we needed to hear. And it makes it that much more relatable. Even if we didn't go through the same issues that Paul did, there are things that he said that I'm sure everyone listening had at least one thing that they've been through, experienced, or know someone who has, that they can take that and go, okay, I can do something with this. I can move forward with this. I can help people with this. So I thank you for being so open and willing to share your story. If you guys want to connect with Paul in the comments, you can get into his, let's see, what do we have? We have his Facebook group, Rewrite Your Story, a call to action. We have his Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, like all kinds of things that are in the description for you guys to get connected with him, get his website, get his free guide, How to Write Your Story. And I want to encourage everyone to take time and make room for yourself to start writing your story. Take back your pen. It's very empowering. It can be very hard to do, and it can be very scary. But now you have Mr. Paul Forchione who can support you walking through writing your story.
Well, I thank you for that. And the story that I told you, that's years in the making. I didn't just get up and be able to tell that story the way I did. I had to practice that over and over again and get it to where I like it. And we're a work in progress till the day we die. You talk about being in a movie where there's a beginning, middle, and end, but that's just not our reality. It's more like a roller coaster. We have our ups and downs, and we just got to enjoy the now, the present. The past is gone. The future's not guaranteed. We got to enjoy what we're doing right this moment. It's more about the journey than it is about the result or the destination. It truly is. Going back to playing high school baseball, the win there was the journey of going through that and making friends through the journey. I mean, the cherry on top was I was able to make the varsity baseball team, but the meat of it was I was able to make friends going through the journey. And that's what we have to do. Whatever goal that you set for yourself, I know there's going to be elements of that goal that are going to be hard for you. I get that. But you got to be able to enjoy the journey to get there. Because if you don't, I question if this is something you really want to do. Why is it so painful to get to this point? So just really think about that. When you set a goal, you should be enjoying the process of getting there. Again, like I said, not everything's going to be sunshine and roses getting there. You're going to have points where you're going to be low and angry and sad. I get all that. But overall, It should be enjoyable. I
agree with you 100%. So thank you again for being here. If you guys, if Paul's story resonated with you at any point and you feel like he might be that next step for you, check the links in the description below, get connected with him. And I know he would love to hear from you. I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you. And that's the end of our podcast. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. I love your story. There's so much, like I said, that I can learn, and I'm sure our listeners and watchers on YouTube can learn about being able to start writing their story, right? Like you said, it's an evolution. There's a process, and it takes time to craft your story. And even though you've crafted this story, it's still your story. And people are like, well, I don't want to sound fake, and I don't want to talk from a script, and I don't want to do all that. Yet if you don't write your story, if you don't start writing it from somewhere, and you just try to speak on it from memory all the time, when it's your story, your details will change every time. The specifics will change every time. If you don't figure out what it is that you really want to say and practice it and stay with it, what happens is people get confused every time you tell your story, because it should actually be pretty similar or evolutionary as they hear it from time to time. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from the mechanics of your story that I got. From your story specifically, like I said, it was just, wow, I wasn't like that. People tell me that, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. I can't do that. And, make a very good motivational speaker because I'm not that motivational person. And we need people like you who can get up there and encourage and inspire and do that. I'm more of a factual teacher, coach kind of person where I can share things and I can tell my story, but I'm very much more, I'm going to tell you to do something. I want you to sit here and implement right while I'm talking on stage, right? Like, and I think that there's just so much value in what you had to share. And I'm just so honored that you were willing to share that in this space.
Well, thank you. And we need people like you to share your story because you'll resonate with other people. Some people might think, oh, I just got too much energy. And you get up there and you're like, oh, okay, now I can relate to this person because they're more my speed. So it's just a matter of taste. And there's not one fits all. So if you want to get on stage, you should, because it sounds like you have a powerful story that needs to be told as well.
Oh, thank you. I actually wrote my book. I wrote my story, parts of it, back in 2017. And at the time, I thought I had this great author coach. I gave him a great review. I did all this stuff. And it was great at the time for where I was. And I didn't realize how much it was lacking in the true guidance of crafting my story for it to sound connected and for it to be what I envisioned it to be. So I actually pulled it from the shelves, pulled it from publication in 2020 because I said, I can't even promote it. Why do I have it out there? I'm actually in the space now where I'm rewriting my story.
Right on.
I'm recrafting that and it'll eventually be out there, but I think it's every single person has a story to tell. And I think we often will downplay our story because it doesn't seem like it's as bad or as impactful as somebody else's. When if it impacted you and it's your story, then you have a story to tell and someone else is going to resonate with it. I completely believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like going back to being authentic. That you felt like that book wasn't authentic to you. So now you're writing a book that's going to be more authentic to you. And as a result, I think more people will resonate with it. Let me know when it comes out. I'll be happy to support and buy it on Amazon or however you're going to sell it.
Thank you. I appreciate that support. I'm now that I'm talking about it, it's becoming real again. And a lot of those same feelings when I wrote the first time are coming up. And so I've had to kind of sit with myself and work through some of that. I don't know if trauma is the right word, but those trauma responses that I have now around writing my story.
Yeah. They're coming and,
one of the things with writing your story, it involves other people sometimes.
Yeah.
And it impacts other people. Part. And when I wrote my story, I had to talk to my kids and be like, hey, so there's things you need to know before I write this because you're probably going to hate me.
Oh, man. Yeah.
You're probably going to be really mad at me. And I need you to process that. And I need you to be okay with the fact that I'm going to share these things because these are things people might come to you and say, and I don't want to disrupt your world. Yeah, they were angry on some things. Some things they couldn't even process their feelings. I don't even know if they ever did because it wasn't a conversation we ended up having with some of them, but all of them were supportive of me sharing my story. And they're like, yeah, we'll deal with it. Like, that's fine. If that's what you need to do, share it. And they were all at a place, all at their different ages, to be able to say, I'm angry. I can't believe this. I like all these things. And I gave them room to process. And then I even gave them all an opportunity to be like, do you want to read this before I publish? Like, they're like, whatever. We're good, Mom. We dealt with our stuff now. You do what you're going to do. And I think that was probably the hardest part, was having to share things with our kids, knowing that how they saw me truly impacted how I saw myself. And so now that I'm getting ready to write it again, maybe craft it a little better. those things I don't have to go through that this time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's now having someone help me craft it appropriately. That was my big fear. Now that I've got that support, I'm good and on track. But it's those things that just because we've done it once and it didn't work doesn't mean we shouldn't do it again. So for those still watching on YouTube, like if you've tried writing your story and you've not been able to do it, I think Paul's like amazing and would be able to help with you writing your story, because I think whether you ever wanted to be a writer or not, whether you're going to go into speaking or not, maybe you work a full-time job, maybe you're a stay-at-home parent, whatever that is, I think you should write your story and let it be heard anyway. I don't think there has to be anything around it. Like I'm going to be a speaker or I'm going to be selling book. Like I think just writing your story and having that be available to people as you keep living your life, I think is so, so valuable.
I agree with it. Everybody has a story to tell, and everybody goes through struggles like you mentioned. And I think it's okay to fail. I mean, I think that we have this stigma. Like if you fail, I had this client once tell me she was so afraid of failure, so like afraid. And I told her, I go, what do you picture failure to look like? And when she verbalized it, she realized how silly it was. Like she was thinking about it, failure being she being in a room and all her friends being around her laughing at her for failing. And she realized once she said it out loud that was silly. That wasn't going to happen. Because my response to her was is if you have friends like that, you need to find a whole new circle of friends that are going to support you if they're going to be like that if you fail. And she realized, no, they weren't going to be like that. But we have, like you talk about, your mind plays tricks on you, and it goes through a deep negative realm, and you all have these weird things that are not reality, think that that's going to be your reality, and it's not, and it paralyzes us from going forward because we have all these crazy thoughts in our head.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for sharing your time, sharing your story, and it's just been an honor and a pleasure to have you. So,
well, let's keep in touch. Are we friends on Facebook?
I don't know. Okay. I will have to check. Actually, let's just do that right now before we get off of here. My computer's going slow. Oh, yes, we are. We are. Okay. So cool. Let's stay connected. And if there's anything I can do to support you as well in what you're doing, don't ever hesitate to reach out and touch base with me. I think one of the biggest things that I love about not only having people share their stories, I love the collaborative piece on the back end where I can help, if there's a way I can support you or your community and that's a way I can give back, like don't ever hesitate. I'm happy to do that. I love that. And same here. Like I said, when you have the book out, I'd be happy to pay for it and support you. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. No problem. Well, have a good rest of your day. And if I don't talk to you, have a good Christmas. All right. You too. Take care. All right. Bye. Bye.